Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here with you today. Super excited. It's a beautiful day here in the Northwest, and um, so many new things are happening every day. There's just so much new information, and so, as you know, I always like to start with a prayer of gratitude, and so today. Great mystery, creator, sweet and sacred and beautiful earth. I am so grateful to be here with you. And I'm asking for your help to heal us, to heal our grief, to mend our hearts and our minds, to attend well to our bodies, our minds, and our spirits so we can become whole again. And I'm asking for your help for all of us. I'm asking for your guidance. And I'm asking permission of the spirits of land and place and the ancient ones, the ancestors. We all have ancestors, and we thank you for our bodies and our lives. And we're asking that you will help us in this time. There's much to do, and we're asking that you will help us to do what must be done in a peaceful way if we can. Thank you so much. Welcome, great mystery. Hope, amen. So I found myself thinking about grief, about um, the power and the beauty, the mystery of grief, and I found that we don't grieve something unless it has touched us, unless we've been touched by that someone or by that something. We don't grieve unless we have been touched or changed or loved in some way, or had hopes or dreams, visions. And so it's just interesting for me to think about grief. There's a really amazing book by a man named Stephen Levine called Unattended Sorrow, Recovering from Loss and Reviving the Heart. Unattended Sorrow by Stephen Levine. And this is from page 92 in the text. And it says, what happens when you soften around pain? Simply allowing it to be there without the resistance that turns it to suffering. What happens when mercy infiltrates your wounds? What happens when it permeates those parts of yourself you've abandoned in fear and loathing? We have run away from our pain for so long that we now have no idea how to deal with it. But when we allow the heart to stay open to the emotional unfolding instead of the mind closing around it, we are less afflicted by the not unexpected occasional reappearance of such feelings. We begin to experience a healing that breaks our habitual withdrawal from pain and from life itself. So I like what he's saying about what happens when you soften around pain, simply allowing it to be there without the resistance that turns it to suffering. What happens when mercy infiltrates? What happens when we lean in to that feeling, whatever that feeling may be? I think about, how can we remember to be in touch with ourselves? How can we remember what it means to heal and to make a commitment to what is true for ourselves? And sometimes that means that we need to do a letting go, but we can't, like grief. And the interesting thing about grief is the body's way of letting go, right? So tears, like when we cry, tears are the body's way of letting go. And so, do I allow myself, when I feel that sorrow, when I feel that pain, do I allow myself to release it? Because if I don't, then it calcifies, and what calcifies becomes brittle, and what is brittle can be broken. And so what's important is that we're able to attend to our grief, to our collective grief. And we have so much to grieve for, you guys. Like, it's major. Like, we have, there's a lot going on right now. We have major things that in our bodies and our hearts and our minds. And so I think about, like, what are we grieving? What is it that I'm grieving? And I love, a friend of mine said to me, something. She was quoting either a friend or a colleague, but she said that it's important that whenever we feel like crying, that we allow ourselves to cry, because uh, we never know what we might be healing. And so there's something about that. My friend Ardith had said that to me, and it's true. It's like, who knows? Who knows who knows if we cry? I don't know how many kinds of tears there are. I should do a little research on that. But I think, at one time it was 17, and then another person I thought was, you know, 27 different kinds of tears, but there are so many different kinds of tears. But one of the kinds of tears that accompanies grief is a sorrow. And one of the types of or tears, some of the tears that we may cry are also tears of relief, or of gratitude, or of acceptance, or of confusion. And so there are so many different kinds of tears, and so many different ways that the body wants to let go. Um, and I think that one of the things that I really appreciate is how the body lets us know, but we need to be in touch with the body so that the body can tell us how to process and what it needs. So I think about wherever the grief is in my body, I can attend to that grief. I can bless and bow to that grief. So is it possible for me to bow to love, which seems a little bit easier, maybe not. I don't know if it's easy or not. But that we have that capacity, we can bow to the grief in the same way and feel blessed by the grief in the same way that we have feel blessed by love, and by the graces and the beauties in our lives, by the blessing of, perhaps the hummingbird at the feeder, or the clouds, the beautiful, excuse me, cloud formations that are in the sky. And then sometimes what happens is that, we have the grief and the ability to bow to the grief, the pain, and the sorrow, but the love, the heart, and sometimes we have also unrequited dreams. So we need to be able to do an inquiry, like a self inquiry, to be able to know and to care for ourselves, to attend to ourselves. Now, one of the things that I feel globally that is happening right now is I believe that we all carry a lot of grief because we have not been paying attention to what has been happening to our environment, and to the earth, and to the so many of these missing persons, and missing animals, and missing plants, and missing, like, so many things have gone missing right under our supposedly watchful eye, but we're not watchful, we're not paying attention. And then the things that we do have feelings about, there's just so many diversions, and we can really get diverted into all of these different people and places and things, and not really attend to the fact that, oh my God, this is really painful. This is really hard that, these trees have been cut down that, have sheltered my home for so long. Like, I had, there was a series of cedar trees that were outside my home, and the grief that I felt was immense when I got this little notice on my door that said, "Oh, these trees are going to be cut down." And they must have been at least I would say 300 or 400 years old. They were incredibly beautiful. It was when I lived on Cherry Street, and in this marvelous house. And I loved the house, and I loved the trees, and I spent a lot of time with them. They were my friends. And I thought, oh, I thought of all these things that I could do. I could chain myself to the tree. I could do a butterfly hill thing and go up and camp in the tree. And or I could, so I went and I thought, well, what is it that I really can do? And one of the things that I know that happens at funerals, at a lot of the life celebrations that I've done is there's never been a life celebration or funeral or um, or ceremony for the celebration of someone's life where we've not included music and singing. It's something that's always included that I found is always included with that final um, uh, celebration. Or what my mother taught me was, that we carry this something called a soul bundle, and that soul bundle is cared for and treasured and held in a precious way. And so, I sang, and there's research now and science that talks about how trees talk to each other and how they sing, and how when they are harmed, they also have a terrible grief, and that they share that grief with their community and with the other trees and beings that are around them. And so in life, and no one escapes it. It's not something that any of us is not faced with. If we love, if we care about anything, or if we care about anyone. And I believe that now we're really being called into a deep reflection. I like what the Hopi uh, uh, um, White Eagle message was around that we're in a vision quest, or we are in a time of visioning, that it's time for us to go within and to vision for our lives, and to just notice, what is my vision showing me. Now, what we also face is we have to face our fears. We have to face our fears. We have to face our loves. We have to face our yearnings, our blessings, and we must face our sorrows. And so when I think about this, I also think about the not stuffing of the feelings, because if we don't stuff the feeling, we can attend to the feelings, then we can heal things. Right? And I can't let go of something until I fully feel it and recognize it and acknowledge it and honor it. And the only time, I love this, Sharon Reed, one of my mentors, said this to me. She said, the only time that a wound deepens is where we are not willing to mend it. And so we could actually mend those wounds and heal ourselves and each other, and really help ourselves going forward and the earth going forward, by being willing to make amends. And when I make amends, then I mend it. I love the word amends because it has the word mend. It's like, oh, the word amends has the word mend in it. So I love that and I appreciate that. And so there's a level of honor and respect when we have our grief. Like, if I can have my grief, I am in a place of deep honor and respect of what I've been given by someone, by something, by an experience that I'm having with someone. I have the opportunity to really be blessed by that experience, and to have the holy experience or the sacred experience of the tears. And in the tears, we're being blessed, but also in the tears, we are able to do the letting go. And so I wonder about our willingness to really be touched by things, and moved by things, because where we are touched and moved, we will be impacted. And my friend William Whitman's poem, certain loss awaits you. When you love someone, it's certain loss awaits you. So what? Throw yourself away in love. It's one of my favorite poems of all time. Thank you, William. Thank you so much. I think about this. And so in this, I was thinking also about expectations, and how, uh, when we love someone or we love something or we care about something or someone, oftentimes we run into expectations. And I wrote a poem. I've been doing a lot of writing these last few months. Um, with my, not only with my friends and in my writers group, but also in my morning meditation time. Oftentimes I'll do some writing in that time. But this is called expectancy. How expectations are made of lightness and gravitas. Intrinsically, how they hover, taken away from their original warmth. Bridging from the past to future disappointments. Shimmering heat underneath the skin, a shield to shed if we are unable to see. How close we could be if it were broken off, blinded. Then they couldn't find their way back to us and we could grow. In the dawn that shatters both of our bodies just now. Pollen from our dreamscape attending to a wilderness that makes sense if we can let ourselves be seen. Attached at the center of life making, touched by something greater than ourselves that still lingers and stretches as ceaseless horizon across the living room, bedroom, study. How we can look for something we cannot find, but we can follow the sound. We can hear it calling, humming, vibrating. That may know the summons to the dappled light across your back as you are waking. That may know the summons to the dappled light across your back as you are waking. As you are waking. And so I think about expectations, and it's interesting how we can ask or we can expect, we can share or we can hold internally and not share. And but I find that if we share, if we're able to move something, if we're able to share about where we're coming from, then we don't end up with this inability to connect or unwillingness to really deeply connect with what and who we love and what and who we want. One of the things that's important about grief is that we allow ourselves to have support. And a lot of different things can support us, but one of the things that I appreciate is I appreciate that there's a quote that says, that friendship is the love that heals all loss. Friendship is the love that heals all loss. And one of the things that's really powerful about friends is that, and friendship is that friendship is not only the love that heals all loss, but a friendship really does a lot of the forgiveness work. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I know that I and my friends, eventually you're not going to say the thing your friend wants to hear more than anything. Eventually you're not going to do the right thing, but what's so beautiful about friendship is that we have that capacity to love each other more than our mistakes. Like, we recognize we're going to make mistakes and we're not going to do everything perfectly every time. No one can, but that our love is greater. And so how can we allow our love to be greater so that we can hold one another in our love, in our blessings, in our grief with some patience and some support. So we have support also from our ancestors, not only from our friends, but also from our ancestors. And we have so much beauty, even in our homes, so much, there's so much support in the four walls of our homes and in our shelters. We have these incredible shelters. And I was just thinking about palapas and how my great-grandfather was from Mexico, and he really caused me to I spent so much of my life in Mexico because it's a true home for me. It's one of my true homes. And I know that when I'm in the palapa, it is round, it is comforting, it is sacred. It reminds me of where I come from. It reminds me of where I'm going. It reminds me of what's real and true. And there's something about that that allows real life to come to me. But all of our homes everywhere are that way, and they are all made of, the bones and the blood, as Dawn and I were talking about in our talk last in the last Real Medicine talk on Friday, that we really are living in the blood and in the bones. It's a different way to state it, but the blood and the bones of the earth. And so this shelter is sacred, and it's interesting. Like, how do we want to be supported? How can we allow our shelter to support us as we support our shelter? It is a reciprocal relationship. And so I was thinking about grief and how to attend and hold. And one of the things I think about when I'm thinking about the attending to that is that there has to be an internal person who's an adult who loves and cherishes and cares for you, like yourself, your adult self, that cares and loves and cherishes you and will take good care of you. They can hold that younger self, or even the self that you are at this age, that has the capacity and the ability to hold you through difficult things. And the recognition that difficult things are a part of life. They're not all of life, they're just a part of it, right? And so there are wonderful things and there are difficult things. And it reminds me of my friend. He was a Lama Wangdor. And I remember I asked him to teach my students some meditation practices, and he came all the way from India, from his cave, which was amazing. And his friendship, oh my gosh, what a beautiful and soothing friendship! And Lena, my beloved friend Lena, and Joy and Nayando, and oh my goodness, the times we would have. And of course, Myrna. And so he did a meditation where he taught everyone to fill themselves with suffering and to just bring in all the suffering in the world and to acknowledge it and see it. And then he suggested that we, really kind of let that fall away, and let that do what it needed to do and fall away, and then to fill our entire bodies with all the beauty in the world, and to allow ourselves to see that and feel that and know that, and then to move that beauty to half of the body, and then to allow that suffering to fill the other half of the body, and that we could simply see and feel and acknowledge and know that this is the place of beauty and the place of suffering, the place of love and the place of sorrow, that all of those things are integral and swirling in the cup of life. And so I think that it is important that we are able to acknowledge the feeling, because if we feel something, it will pass, it will move, it will change, it will shift. If we acknowledge something, if we speak about something, we have a good friend or a colleague or a family member, and we can share something with them. How do we know the difference between sharing something in a good way or not? It's an opening experience. We're looking for resolution. There's a feeling of relief and release after we've shared it. So we can tell whether or not we're actually speaking about it in a healing way. We know that if it's not neutral about another person, then we may not be really in our own work. If we're talking about another person, we're not doing our own work. We're not in our own work. And so what we want to be able to really, I think, during this Vision Quest time, we want to be able to, and I'm calling it Vision Quest time, as White Eagle called it, with the Hopi message to the world from the Hopi Nation, which we're praying for and holding in our dreams and prayers, as we are also with all of the nations, the indigenous nations, the Navajo, and our prayers and our thoughts are with all of these original peoples, and of course with my family on Pine Ridge, and in South Dakota. We're holding in prayer and sending our love, because it is the love that heals all wounds. And I'm so grateful. So I think about that, and I think about how we can um, begin to recognize that we can respond with ability to our own feelings. We can respond with ability, even if we have shyness and a lot of, like, sweetness, or even if we have a lot of courage and boldness. But what's important, I think, is to address these things with a kindness. And so, how can we have that kindness toward ourselves? And we're all changing, and we're all in the process of changing. And there's this Stanley Konitz poem called "The Layers" that I really appreciate, and I wanted to share it with you. And it's I've walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was. Though some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look, before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon, and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go. And every stone on the road precious to me in my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus clouded voice directed me, live in the layers, not in the litter. Live in the layers, not in the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. I am not done with my changes. And that's Stanley Konitz from The Layers, the collected poems of Stanley Konitz. And it's copyright 1978 by Stanley Konitz, reprinted by permission of W.W. Norton and Company, Incorporated. So live in the layers. How do I live in the layers? And our feelings and our emotions are those layers. So as a practice, our practice this week is to acknowledge whatever feeling comes, and then as Stephen Levine was talking about, to lean into whatever comes to our gate, and whether that's love or excitement or joy. Another thing I really appreciate about something about feelings is what Brene Brown says. She says, one of the greatest vulnerabilities is to show our full joy. It's one of the most vulnerable things that we can do, is to show our full joy. And so I think that we're being called to a new level of vulnerability and a new level of welcoming with the world and with ourselves, and with our deep knowing of what is hurting us, what is hurting, and what is helping us, and how can we really extend ourselves in a way that will allow us to be more helpful than hurtful, to be more helpful. And so, how shall the heart be reconciled? How shall the heart be reconciled? So to care for ourselves and one another, and to befriend ourselves and one another. Thank you so much. I hope that you are all well, and I hope that that something in this conversation with the mystery has been helpful to the heart. Thank you so much, and I will talk with you Friday. Mm-hmm.